right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to the joint Pate Group and Joy of SharePoint webinar series, Illuminating Microsoft 365. Today is going to be part 2 of a webinar that we did, oh goodness, the Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend.
Yep.
We didn't know that it was going to be a part 2 when we decided to dive into forms. But you all, Richard, you did an awesome job on that webinar. We were going through it, but people have questions. What about this? How can we do that? And we thought, wow, there's even more to this little thing called forms than we thought we could do in a 1-hour webinar. So here's part 2. You asked, we answered. I am Joy Apple with Pate Group, also known as the Joy of SharePoint. I have with me today my workplace twin, Richard Calderon. We are both modern workplace strategists at Pate Group. We've been doing this SharePoint, Teams, Microsoft 365 thing for some years. How's your day going, Richard?
Day's going okay so far. You know, I was off last week, which was nice. And so just kind of getting back into the swing this week. But yeah, having a good week so far.
We're going to break you in with this webinar, aren't we? Just jump into it.
We are. Yeah. So just like Joy said, you know, we've been doing this webinar series for quite some time now. And one of the sessions that we had a few weeks or so back was focused around Microsoft Forms and all the awesomeness that is Microsoft Forms. And we got so into it that we kind of ran out of time, if you will. There was a whole other set of things to talk about. So we decided, let's circle back and go ahead and have another webinar that could focus on those areas. And that's really primarily focused around the integration of forms with a number of other services in Microsoft 365. You know, I got to say, Joy, this is one of my favorite. If I had to pick an app and something fun to do in Microsoft 365, that really just kind of touches all different areas of it, I would definitely say Forms is one of my favorite ones because you can use it in so many different places. I don't know if you've seen some of your customers really leveraging Forms across different parts of Microsoft 365 just yet. I've been pushing mine too, for sure.
Yep. No, absolutely. And it's surprising because this little app started out so quiet, so small. It's still simple, don't get me wrong, but the simplicity of it's like, okay, that's great to go grab some stuff here and there. But when I look back now, suddenly you're like, wait a minute, use this web part on your SharePoint page, throw this into Teams, you know, send it out into the world and gather information. It's really quite fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to get into some of those details about that here today. So kind of like we always do, we do have a poll question, and I had to pull that back up here on the screen. Did we pop that poll into the Q&A? Stacy, I didn't even ask that before we got started, but you should have the link to this poll. Fantastic. Thank you. You should have the link to this poll in the Q&A. We always want to ask at least a couple of things at the very least, you know, kind of who's who in the audience today. So if you'll just kind of let us know what your job role is, that's always helpful for us. And then again, we're going to talk a whole lot more about these integrations with Forms and different applications and products in Microsoft 365. And just sort of curious to know if you've tried any of them just yet. And so we kind of got a running list of them here at the moment. So we're going to go ahead and just flip over to responses and see what kind of responses we might be getting just yet. So thanks again for folks who are participating in the polls. I've got a few folks that are IT pros here in the audience today. And again, as you have an opportunity, feel free to just jump in and continue responding to this poll because we're welcoming the feedback as we go through. And it looks like at the very least, yeah, people definitely using it in Teams. That is great to hear. You know, we did an entire webinar series focused on Microsoft Teams. And so polls using Forms is certainly one thing you can do in Teams. And there's actually some relatively recent new Microsoft Forms integrations into Teams that we'll also talk a little bit about too, that might be something that would be useful for you all to try. So let's just kind of jump into that. So again, feel free to answer this poll anywhere along the way. We certainly appreciate the feedback here. Okay, so as that second question there is kind of giving away in a way, whether you knew it or not, like we talked about in the last forms webinar, you can absolutely create forms to be able to survey employees. You can use it inside the organization, outside the organization, like we're doing now with the poll that we just set up. And you can set up quizzes and other types of things that are useful for being able to capture information in a form format. But what you might not have known is that Forms very easily does integrate with a whole set of other Microsoft 365 applications and tools, such as SharePoint and Outlook and OneDrive, and a few of you mentioned that you're using Forms in Teams. You can use Forms within the context of a stream video, which Joy talked a little bit about during our stream episode as well. And there's even more things that you can do. So again, we're gonna kind of circle back to some things that maybe are familiar to you, maybe not. But we wanted to just talk through some of these so that you had a chance to kind of understand how some of this stuff works. Okay. All right, so let's just kind of jump in. So I've got my demo environment here. This is our trusty demos that we tend to use. Logged in as this user Megan here at the moment. So again, you know, Forms is really straightforward. Oops. Forms really straightforward to get to. You may have noticed, by the way, here in my demo, on the home page for Office 365 here, when you go to office.com, one thing actually just changed for me just this week, I happened to notice, is that rather than all of the Office 365 icons kind of showing in the top section, middle of the page here, they're now kind of neatly pinned to the left-hand side here, which I think is pretty cool, actually. This may or may not have shown up in your tenant just yet. Like I said, it just showed up in my demo tenant here as of this week. But that you get familiar with what these different tools are. Of course, as you hover over them, it's going to give you the full name for them and all. But Forms is a really easy one to get to. Generally, if you just click on this Forms icon here, it's going to take you to sort of the Forms landing page. And again, we covered this in depth last time, so I'm not going to go through this entirely right now. But suffice to say, if you wanted to be able to create a new form, you could create new forms here just for yourself to send to other people to gather information. You can also go into group forms and create forms within any of the Microsoft 365 groups or teams, in this case two, to which those are connected. And you can create forms there as well. So again, it's really easy to be able to get started using forms. But I want to talk to you about some other ways that you might not have thought about using forms before. So if I go back to the home page here, one of the first ways that is a really simple way just to gather some info from others, whether they're in a team or not, just some other people in the organization, is just to capture that data through an Excel spreadsheet that's essentially in your OneDrive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this user's OneDrive. And again, this is not something that you might necessarily think of right off the bat as creating forms from here, but you can. So just like in anything else with OneDrive or SharePoint for that matter, you can absolutely just create new items here from the new toolbar. And if you click on this drop down here, you'll see that you get a couple of different options of things you can create, Office documents and even a link. But there's one here maybe you might have ignored or just kind of passed over before. It's slightly oddly named in my opinion, but it's called Forms for Excel. So when you click on Forms for Excel, you're going to be asked, okay, what do you want to name this? And maybe you're just trying to gather some information, some initial information from some of your teammates, like, okay, maybe we want to have a location for our team offsite or something like that. Okay, so I want to get some info here. So when you click create, you'll notice that what it does is it actually shells over directly to Forms, and it's created a brand new form for you automatically. But the best part about this is that it already created that Excel workbook for you here in OneDrive. So you notice right here, right in this spot, there's that location team offsite Excel spreadsheet that it created, and it's just immediately connected to this form. Okay, so if I wanted to have a new question or so, where should we hold this year's offsite or something like that, and maybe we want to go to a hotel or something like that, and then maybe we want to go camping. Who knows? Maybe you're into that kind of thing, and maybe one of your teammates has like an amazing house or something like that. So let's just do it at John's house or something like that, okay? So you want to go ahead and start creating new questions. In this case, when should we have it? And maybe we're going to do it, you know, next month or in the fall, or maybe, you know, after all of this COVID stuff goes away. Who knows, right? Things like that. But basically, you're creating form. Again, we talked about this at length last time. It's really easy to set up these questions. But once you're actually, when you share this out with others and get them to actually start submitting, so I'll go to preview here, for example, and let's say I want to choose a couple of options and I hit submit. This is automatically just updating the data right here in this Excel spreadsheet. So it's live data, essentially. It's connected directly to that Excel workbook. As you see here, there's that submission from Megan, who I've logged in as, and there's the responses to those couple of questions, you know, where should we hold it and so forth. You still have all of the, you know, the same capabilities that you have here in this form as the owner, which is to say you can go to see the responses. You know, again, you all were really familiar with seeing this because we do this with polls all the time. And for that matter, that button right there, the one that says open in Excel, is actually just going to do exactly what it sounds like. It's opening that workbook. So you can think of it as kind of coming at the data in a couple of different ways. If I went straight into forms and created the form, the workbook doesn't really exist yet until I actually do open in Excel, in which case then it creates that Excel document that has all the output in it. But if I wanted to, I could actually just have that Excel workbook all ready to go, created it in my OneDrive, and then be able to go and start creating all my forms questions from there. So I think that's pretty slick, actually. It's really easy to be able to go in to OneDrive, in this case, and start creating a brand new form. I will mention to you that, again, because this is all SharePoint based, we all know that OneDrive really sits on top of SharePoint as its foundation. In any Microsoft 365 group, you can also create forms in this exact same way. So if you go into the SharePoint site for a Microsoft 365 group, you can also say new forms for Excel, and it works the exact same way, except that file is now going to be stored in the group SharePoint site as opposed to in your OneDrive. Okay, pretty slick. So something just kind of, you know, talking about practicality here. So let's say I did this and, you know, I wanted to get some input from Joy, I wanted to get some input from Stacy and just kind of get a general feel. But then I really do want to be able to share this form, this survey poll, with a broader set of team members. It's really trivial, again, as you all know, because I'm sure most of you probably attended our OneDrive session as well. It's really easy to move this form, in this case, move this to another location, okay? So I'm actually going to do this here from forms. If I go into forms and I've got this form here, this is the one that I created again in my OneDrive. I'm going to click on the ... here and say move in this case. And then notice here it pops up these other destinations where I can move that form to. And these are all Microsoft 365 groups or teams, rather, teams connected SharePoint sites to which I am a member. So maybe I want to share this location team offsite poll with this Mark 8 project team. So I can just select Mark 8 project team and choose move. And then now this is going to disappear, poof. But I can go into group forms here and then choose. You'll notice that the Mark 8 project team here now shows that there's one form. And when I click on that, lo and behold, there's that form. What's really neat about this now is that the existing data in the form came along for the ride. So if I had some submissions from Joy or Stacy or anyone else, that data is going to exist here. As you notice in the responses, there's already that one response, the one that I gave, okay? Now, if I click open in Excel now, in this case, what you will see actually here is this workbook is actually now in the shared documents library of that Microsoft 365 team, okay? And I can validate that by coming up here into the little breadcrumb, clicking on shared documents, and see that lo and behold, there is that Excel spreadsheet, okay? So when I moved the form itself kind of moved from my location, my forms workspace, over into the groups workspace, so that now I have that option of being able to share this more broadly across the team. Okay, so that's probably a practical use case. You just create a form. Again, you can do that through OneDrive. You can get some initial feedback just by sharing it with some folks. And then when you're ready, you can, again, very easily move it over into a team, okay? So now that I've got it here in the group, now I need to be able to get more input from others. So you might think to yourself, what are a couple of the really simple ways that I could do that? Well, at the very least, you could use this SharePoint site. Again, this is the Teams connected SharePoint site or group connected SharePoint site that is part of this Mark8 project team. So as far as integrations go, you could go to this home page. And again, we all know that we love modern SharePoint because it's just super easy to be able to add content to the page and rearrange web parts and things of that nature. But so here is the home page for this Mark8 project team. And let's just say I wanted to prominently render that survey right here on this page. Well, as you might imagine, there's a web part for that. So I can go up here and say edit this page. And of course, now it's going to put it into the edit mode. This is assuming that you're logged in as a user that has the permissions to edit in this case. But now I put this page into edit mode. And let's just say, okay, maybe I want to drop a web part here. So I'm going to hover over this right section and choose a new web part. Of course, it brings up my little web part picker. And sure, I could scroll all the way through this, but maybe I just know I want to type in form. And there it is. There's a Microsoft Forms web part that I can select. It gives me a couple of different options. Do I want to create a new form or do I want to add an existing one? So this is the best part to me. You say add existing forms here in this case, and you get a couple of different options of things you can do. You can choose to simply collect responses from users, or if you just wanted it to be kind of informative, you could just say, I want to show the results. But in this case, I want to go ahead and collect the input from my users. So what I'm going to do is go back to forms here. And this is the actual form itself that I want to render in that web part. And the simple way, again, if you guys remember to do this, is you click this big share button. And the first thing it says here is, do you want to just copy the link to that form? I click on copy, and then I go back into this web part, and I'm just going to Control V paste that in right there. Okay. So once I say okay, look what happens. Pretty slick. There's that form embedded as a web part right here on this page. Okay. So now once I republish this page, others who are a member of this team will also see that web part here. So for that matter, if I go and log in as another user, I'm logged in as a teammate, Nestor Wilkie in this case here. But if I log in as a different user and I go to that Mark8 project team site, so again, I'm logged in as Nestor now, so a different user, but I'm going to click here, go to this site, and sure enough, once it renders, there's that forms web part that showed, the one that just got added to the page. And so now I can submit my vote, in this case to the poll, as Nestor, okay? So I'd say next month and hit submit. And in this case here, you notice that I have the option to submit another response, but you can set up forms, and I don't recall if we talked about this last time, but you can set up forms to be able to only allow a single response from a user, in this case, an authenticated user. And so if I didn't want to do that, for example, I could go back to the form, and if you hit the ... more actions here, under settings, there's an option here right there that says one response per person, okay? So if I choose one response per person and save that, automatically it's saved with the form itself. And I go back here and refresh this page, what you'll see is it changes the verbiage here, or the user interface here for this web part, to simply say that, hey, you have already submitted a response to this particular form. So it's only allowed to do one. So you can't submit more than one, kind of skew the results and things like that, okay? So that's another easy integration. So we saw how you can do that through OneDrive and create a form, saw how you can easily move that over into a group connected SharePoint site, and then even surface that web part right here as surface that form as a web part right here on the page. You ever have any of your customers, Joy, that have started using forms, web parts on their SharePoint pages just yet?
Yes, actually, I was doing some mentoring with some folks last week that were super excited to see
Yeah.
just how easy it is to put it out there for folks as they're on the intranet.
Absolutely, absolutely. In a number of customers that I've helped recently, when we've done training and then we've submitted a kind of a training feedback form,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been super easy and trivial to effectively add that survey, that evaluation feedback form to any number of SharePoint sites so that people can easily go and submit them. So yeah, so that's been another thing too. I feel like customers have been really gravitating towards is leveraging that forms web part for SharePoint as well. Okay.
And if you
So
don't like the space it takes up on the page, but you still want it there, don't forget about your quick links. You guys can still put it in a quick and easy button too. You got
absolutely, yeah.
options.
If you just wanted to simply kind of have that as one of these quick links that opens up, another tab or something like that, super easy to do, right? Um, so now we've seen how you can use OneDrive integration with forms. We talked a little bit about how you can do this from SharePoint as a web part. Let's go ahead and flip back over to another pretty obvious way that you might consider being able to share this form with others in your team to get feedback. Again, we're trying to find out when or where we should hold the offsite. Teams is one that makes the most sense, right? Because again, you're all driving more and more of your users towards Teams these days. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Teams here in this case as this user. And let's say again, I'm already on the Mark8 project team in the general channel. Maybe this is just where I want to do it because it's sort of a general question that I'm asking for everyone. Where do we want to have this offsite? An easy way, again, to be able to pull in a form into Teams is just simply integrate that through a tab. And we've talked about that a lot during our Teams webinar series. But if I go up here and I choose the little plus sign next to the other existing tabs in this channel, one of the options I'm going to get right up here at the top is forms. So if I click on forms, you'll see that I can do a couple of different things. I can create a new form in this case, or I can add an existing form. And I want to come back to this one down here because this is one of the relatively new things that you can do that Microsoft is slowly releasing to tenants at the moment. But in this case, let's say I want to add an existing form. And you'll notice here right off the bat, if a form exists inside the group to which this team is a part of, so again, this is the Mark8 project team group, and this is the team on which that group sits, then you'll notice that that form automatically already shows for me in this case here, okay? So again, that was a form that we had in our OneDrive, and then we moved over to the group. But here it is, so I can just select that form, and then similar to on the SharePoint web part, I've got a couple of different ways that I can render that form as a tab. I can do collect responses. I can certainly just show the results, and I can even use it to collaborate with others if I was just still wanting to build out and flesh out that form. I could actually set it up to be a tab that's more collaborative where other people have edit capabilities along with me. But again, let's say in this use case, I'm just using it to collect responses. You can certainly leave the box checked here to post to the channel about this tab and click save. And then two things are going to happen here. One is it's going to create that brand new tab up top, and notice that it says that the response has already been submitted. Let me go and uncheck that here just so we can get that to render again. So I'm going to uncheck the one response per person and then go back in here into Teams again and just kind of click away and click back on this form. Okay, so at the very least, you're going to get that tab that shows the form itself. And of course, because we said to post to the channel about it, you're going to see here as well that there is this post, which you can come in and edit, to say more specifically, please fill out this form to give us your input on where we should hold this year's team offsite. But once you have that here as well, you can also absolutely just add a second tab if you wanted. Again, we could use the exact same form, but this time maybe you want to just show the results, okay? So in this case here now, you've made it really easy for your team members to be able to come into the Mark8 project team to which they're all a member through the conversations where you've kind of indicated to them that, hey, there is a form here. I would like for you guys to fill out that form. And you've also pinned these tabs to the top so that they can click on this one, come in and fill it out really easily, hit submit, And then of course they can also click on this one and also see what everybody else is voting in on in this case, okay? So that's pretty useful in my opinion. I think that that's, you know, as much, maybe even not more so in many cases as the SharePoint form web part. Having these tabs here where you've got this big kind of beautiful view of the form itself, that's another really compelling way to be able to drive your users, your team, towards going and filling out the form, okay? All right, so while we're here in Teams, it's probably worth mentioning at the very least too, that you can do what are referred to as quick polls. You have quick poll as a concept in Teams, and you have quick poll as a concept also in Outlook. And we'll talk about that here and show that in just a second. But you'll notice here for this particular user, you know, we've got all kind of the standard different options that you can do in a conversation. I can format, I can attach a document, I can do stickers and memes and GIFs and things of that nature. But if you haven't added it yet, you notice that one of the suggested apps that you can also include in a conversation in a channel is Forms. So what this is going to do when I click on Forms is just going to ask me, do you want to create a quick poll? And the quick poll is basically just a one question, you know, what do you want to be able to quickly get some information from some users? So, you know, maybe it's something like, you know, what should we order for lunch this Friday or something like that, you know? And you're going to say, well, let's do pizza, or let's do, you know, sandwiches. Maybe you want to add another option and say salads. You can optionally give people a multiple choice, but they're going to choose all three if you do that, obviously. So that's basically what you get, is you get to do this quick poll, and when you click next here, it's going to give you a little bit of a preview of what that card is going to look like when you submit that. And of course, you can always edit it to go back and revise it. But when you click send, essentially what you're doing now is you're just creating in line in the conversation here that poll, to which it's, again, just that single question. Everybody who's a member of the team is going to see that question now, and it even puts two different posts, one for the poll itself and one to display the results. Okay.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah, go for it.
This is a great way if you know you need to start doing like weekly team meetings in your general channel in Teams, or even just the normal way. What time works well for everyone? Mm-hmm. Don't do a chat for that, because then you have to go back and read it all. Don't send an email for that, because then you have to go back and follow up with all those emails. Just do this.
I think that's a great idea. It's a great idea. And you're always going to be better off when you give people options to select from, rather than kind of like a blank slate of, you know, hey, when's a good time and day to meet? And then everybody gives all these different, you know, options and opinions, and it's way too difficult to figure it out. But if you say, you know, when should we meet? Should we meet Friday morning or Monday afternoon or whatever it may be? Then you'll have better results in that case. So yeah, good. That's a great suggestion. Thanks, Joy. Okay, so you know, if I select pizza here, you'll notice that once I submit this, and it's just going to show in real time here that's that vote. So that matter, I could actually even change my vote if I really wanted to. No, I changed my mind. I want to be healthy and do salads. I submit my vote again, and it sort of takes that vote away from me. It knows who I am, and it changes my vote to the one that I selected here. Let's say I flip over to a different user again. I'm going to flip back over to Nestor in this case. So Nestor is a teammate of Megan. And of course, as you can see here, he's a member of that Mark 8 project team as well. So when I go to that channel, there it is, just like you'd expect. There are those poll questions. Maybe Nestor wants to really vote for pizza because that's his favorite. So he can submit that vote, and now you've got the 50-50 and so forth. So again, pretty easy to be able to do that through a quick poll in Teams, okay? I will point out, just in case you're interested, you know, where is that poll itself? It is going to be in the Forms workspace for, again, the group or the team from which that's created. So if I go to the browser, I go to Group Forms, if I go into the Mark 8 project team, and let me refresh this here. There we go. it's actually showing up in this case under my, meaning Megan's forms. And so I can correct it. It's actually going to be the person who created the form. It's going to be in their forms workspace. So what should we order for lunch today? Notice that it says this quick poll is a read only and cannot be edited here in forms from the browser, because it's only something you can do through, in this case, quick poll through Teams. Okay, but the actual form itself is right there in your forms workspace. So again, quick poll in Teams, that's a no-brainer. But let's say again, you've got, you've got Teams on your very near-term deployment rollout plan for 2020. So at the moment, not everybody in the organizations is using Teams potentially, or it's kind of a mix of some and the other. Email, as we all know, that's a really obvious one. Everybody's got email, so it's always super easy to be able to send email and make sure that people are gonna at least receive some communication that you're sending them. So you can also do quick polls in Outlook, just like you could do in Teams. And I want to mention a couple of things about this. So I'm going to actually just do this in the browser at the moment. So if I go back in as Megan, if I go into Outlook here, I'm going to open up Megan's Outlook inbox. There was previously, and probably still is, I guess, a add-in for Outlook that was called Quick Poll. And it was all based on forms and so forth, and allowed you to be able to do effectively what I'm showing you talking about here. But effective this month and kind of next month in this time frame, June, July 2020, Microsoft is completely replacing that add-in for Outlook, the one called Quick Poll, with a built-in poll capability. And so that built-in poll capability is the thing to use now. And there's actually some info on the website too, that Microsoft's website, that says you should just uninstall the Quick Poll add-in for that matter. So just a quick heads up that the Quick Poll add-in for Outlook is basically going away, and this new built-in integrated poll using Microsoft Forms for Outlook, that's the way forward. So again, they're rolling it out now. If you don't see it in Outlook on the web, that's probably why. And for that matter, I don't see it yet in Outlook Desktop, because I think it's probably still coming out sometime this month. But anyhow, it's just as easy as being able to say, create a new message. So again, I'm in Outlook on the web in this case, but you create a new message. And although this looks a little bit different here and from Outlook Desktop, the ability to get to these things is relatively the same. And you just kind of have to hunt around if you're not familiar. But the way to get to this form here, this quick poll, there's a little ... here by default right next to this sort of bottom toolbar. And when you click on that, one of those options right there is this one called poll. And so that's the one that's now built in, that's integrated with forms, not the quick poll add-in. But if you click on poll, it's going to pop open this little side pane. And again, just like in Teams, it's going to ask you, what is the question you're asking here? And so, we asked about lunch and so forth, but, when should we schedule the recurring project meeting? And, again, just like Joy was saying, right? So Monday mornings, Wednesday, I'll have to do that, right? Wednesday, noon or something like that. And then what about Friday, mid-afternoon or something like that? And you can say insert the poll into email. It is going to do something pretty cool, actually. It allows you to be able to, okay, so how will the recipients vote? They can either do it directly in the email body message itself and just that's it, you click and submit it, or they can actually open it up in the web browser, which is going to do exactly what you think it's going to do, and open it in Forms. But when you do that here, notice it embedded the actual title or the question itself for the poll. You even indicated it here in the subject as it is a poll, and then you got this little hyperlink here that says vote, view, vote in browser. It CCs you as the person who created that poll. And so again, just to make it simple, I will go ahead and send that to Nestor, again, my other demo user, and click send. So now I've sent off that email that has that poll. I'll open up Nestor's email in this case. So I'm logged in as Nestor again, go back to Outlook, and there is that right waiting in my inbox. there's that poll question that just came from Megan. So you can see what the experience is for the recipient of that particular poll. And there you go. So it's embedded right here in the email. This is going to look the same, by the way, whether you opened it up in the web browser or whether you opened it up in the Outlook desktop app. It even works, for that matter, through Outlook mobile. But in this case here, I could just simply respond and vote. If I click on vote, it's just going to record my vote. Or again, as you saw earlier, there's that link here that just simply allows me to click on the link. It's going to open up that poll in a browser. Okay. So pretty slick integration here for being able to very easily get a poll, a quick poll set up through Outlook.
There are a couple questions. Are we ready?
Sure.
Okay. So someone had missed the first session and they wanted to know if forms can do dynamic things like hiding fields on based upon other fields, or cascading values such as picking a state and then showing only cities in that state.
So I think there's a couple of parts to that question.
Mm-hmm.
There is definitely the capability to do what's called branching in forms. And so just kind of briefly showing as an example of this here, if I go into any form, let me find a group form here, that's something I can use. So I'll go back to this location team offsite. So you can always take a question and then here from the ... options, you can do what's called add branching. So this option right there. And when you say add branching, it's going to give you the option that says, based off of if the user selected this response, do something, go to question 2. Or if the user selected this response, go to question, I don't have any more, but go to question 3. Or if the user selected this response, go to the end of the form, things like that. So you can definitely do branching at the very least inside of forms to be able to make it a bit more kind of intelligent in terms of what's the next set of options. In terms of being able to get even more sophisticated, where you have the ability to filter down, a list of states. If in another dropdown it was the US was chosen as the country, that I haven't seen in forms, the basic forms just yet. It's possible that that's something that's possible to do in Forms Pro, although I haven't really looked at it in Forms Pro either, quite honestly. So I think that's something we'll have to follow up on.
Okay. This person doesn't see the polling buttons in Outlook. Is this only for Outlook in the cloud?
Yeah, I probably just didn't explain that clearly at the moment. So that feature, when I go to new message and here in Outlook on the web, which is in the cloud, that poll, that is something that is, again, relatively newly rolling out to Office 365 last month and this month for sure for Outlook on the web. For Outlook on the desktop, that capability, which is this exact same poll, hasn't fully rolled out just yet. I think it's rolling out this month. I need to go double check the roadmap, but I believe it's rolling out this month in July for Outlook on the desktop. Not exactly sure why it's different from Microsoft's perspective, but just suffice to say, Outlook on the web, you'll see this new integrated poll, or if you haven't, you'll see it very shortly. Outlook desktop, most of you, if not all of you, probably won't see it just yet, but it'll show up sometime by the end of this month is what Microsoft's saying.
And the last question that I see for now, but I believe we've addressed this before. Are these polling platform options agnostic and still work the same on a Mac?
Yes, absolutely. In the sense that, yes, they are platform agnostic in that regard. So you do have the ability, at the very least, as a respondent to a poll or a survey, again, because it's all really browser based for the most part, web based. It's going to work the same whether you're accessing it from a Mac or a PC, or again, in most cases on your mobile device too. But then in terms of some of these little integrations, like the ability to get to poll in Outlook and so forth, they, per my understanding, they all work the same across PC and Mac too when they're fully released. There may be some slight variances. I'm not quite sure because I don't use a Mac, to be honest with you. But yeah, you should be able to use those across those platforms.
I'll add one, I can't call it an observation, but I'll call it third-party feedback. I do have a couple of clients that extensively use Mac, and I would say if you try it in the Safari browser, take it with a grain of salt. And okay, don't walk away, hear me out, but give the new, I'm going to say it, Mac people, I'm going to say it, give the new Edge a try. Don't throw anything at me. Just try it. It is built on top of the Chrome operating system. I don't know if that helps or hurts the case here. We all have very strong opinions, but I would say give it a try. You might see some better functionality if Safari just doesn't, overwhelm you.
I'm a Mac user, so I have to say from a browser, I hardly use Safari. I use Chrome and Edge, and it's much better than my Safari experience. Just saying, as a Mac user.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I would pile on to that and just say, if you haven't tried the new Edge, definitely give it a try. Like Joy said, it's built off of that Chromium browser engine, so it's basically effectively the same as Google Chrome from that regards, except with Microsoft's kind of additional bells and whistles on top of that too. So it's really, really slick, really fast. It's what I'm using here, for that matter, in this demo. So definitely give it a shot for PC and Mac users. Okay, so there are a couple of other things I definitely wanted to show, just because I think it's really slick. If you have some use cases for them, one of them is really just a repeat of what Joy showed last time, but probably worth just talking about in this context for forms integration, which is that you can embed forms into Microsoft Stream videos as well too, for a number of different purposes. Maybe you're wanting to get some feedback, during the course of someone watching a stream video. Maybe it's training, and so you're wanting to sort of capture, did the person watching the video really comprehend what was being expressed during that training video and so forth. So you can embed them fairly easily in stream videos. So I'm back here on the Office 365 homepage for my demo user, and I'm going to go ahead and again use my trusty new kind of left-hand rail for apps here, and I'm going to choose the stream icon. And when you click on that, it launches and takes you directly to the stream portal in this case. And I'm just going to pick a video. Like in this case, I'll just pick this spotlight video that's being shown here, this Microsoft 365 Contoso rollout. And so if I select this video, by default, thank you, sir, it automatically just starts to play. And we talked about stream before as well too. There's just a lot of slick things about Microsoft Stream as sort of your YouTube for your enterprise organization. So we won't go into all those here, but in addition to being able to do the things you might expect to sort of play and fast forward and be able to view captions, which are all based off of this transcript that gets created in being able to effectively transcribe the spoken language in the video. One of the other many cool capabilities is this ability to do what they call interactivity. There's a tab right up here next to transcript that's called interactivity. When you click on that, you get the ability to add a form. So if I wanted to, I could just say add a form. Now the experience to tie this all together is not quite as slick as I would like it to be. Quite frankly, it probably could just be a little easier, but nonetheless, it's not complicated. It's going to ask you, for a form URL. So in order to be able to find a form URL, you've got to actually go out to forms to grab the form itself. And what they tried to do is make a nice little nifty way for you to say, okay, here's a little button that when you push that, it'll just actually open up forms for you. And let's say, I'll just pick these because they're here. So if I want to take one of these, and again, I want to do the nifty little share, and I'm just going to copy this URL directly from here. So I'm just going to click copy. I'm going to go back to my tab here in Stream, and I'm going to just do a Control-V paste of that URL for that form right here into that box. And then I also can just name this something different here. You notice I've been testing this a little bit. So this doesn't have to be the name of the form. It could be something else that you're calling it here, just a label essentially. So, like let us know what you think, for example. And then this is the best part. You can say position on the timeline. So all you have to do here really is just sort of drag this around. And as you're dragging this around, pay close attention right here. It's going to actually change where in the video that form, well, I guess I should say, where the video will pause and where it will pop open this form, enabling you as the viewer of the form to be able to now interact with that form, choose some options and click submit, and then very easily and intuitively be able to resume the video so that it can continue playing. So you can just add it here. Let's say I want to be, at position 9 or something like that. I click add to timeline, and there you go. There's that form itself. It's showing you where it was. And just for grins, I'm going to add another one because I want to show you that you can do more than one. So if we go back out here to forms again, and let's just pick this other one. So here's the lunch one. I'm going to hit share, copy, go back to stream, sorry. So into Teams all the time. And Control V, paste that in. And maybe I'm going to say this is, final feedback or something like that. And the location of where I want that to be, oops. Yep, that kind of gave away the ending, but nonetheless, let's say somewhere here around the end is where I want this final feedback. I hit timeline or add to timeline. Now I've got 2 places where a form is going to pop up. So what I'm going to do is back all this up at least, a little bit before this form. I'm even going to put it into full screen mode in this case. Okay. So you notice these little dots right here, by the way. That's where those forms are going to pop up because the video is going to pause. Because I clicked it accidentally. So the reason why that first one didn't show is because I clicked it accidentally. And once you've clicked it once, it sort of assumes you've already responded to that one in this case. But anyway, as you can see, the second form, at the very least, that I popped up in there, it paused the video. It's going to give me a chance to submit my response in this case. So maybe this was the final feedback based off of this particular video content. And once it submits, it's all good and it's done. Of course, it's going to slow down here. There you go. And then you'll notice right here at the bottom of the right-hand side of the screen, you get this continue to video option. I can click on that, and then there you go. Then it'll continue playing. All right. So we have a couple of different ways here where it's getting really easy in stream. Add these forms, allow you to be able to collect feedback from users while they're watching through the video, and embed that in so they can interact with the forms itself. You can, just to show you, you can also delete effectively these forms. That's really all you can do from this. If you go back, I want to say delete it because maybe it's not in the right place. You can't go back and edit this to move it into some other place. You effectively just have to delete it and add it back in, okay? So you can delete from the video and then add a form back in. Okay, I know we're getting close to time here, but I certainly want to show you at least one more thing. This is something kind of new that Microsoft released recently. That's an integration, again, with Forms and Teams specifically. But with all the stuff going on right now with, quarantining and people having to work from home, Microsoft, not unique to this, organizations around the world for that matter, have concluded that it can be extremely valuable and really help with your employee sort of sense of well-being, and that could apply to students as well if you're doing this from an educational perspective. But the ability to be able to kind of do a touch point with them, to sort of check in with them on some regular basis and just kind of get a pulse for, hey, how you doing? Hey, Joy, hadn't heard from you, all week. Want to just reach out and see how you're doing, And so a way that you could do that is through a simple survey or poll in Microsoft Forms that you can tie in directly into Teams, and then even use Power Automate to effectively create a flow that'll allow you to be able to set up some kind of a recurrence of when people would effectively get a notification for when you would like for them to respond to that. And so again, this is relatively new. If it's something that you're not seeing in your environment just yet, it's because it's still rolling out. So I hinted at it a minute ago. So I'm going to just show you where that is. If you have this in your tenant and you go to a team channel and you hit the plus sign here and you go to forms again, what you'll see here is you'll see an option that, of course, it's not showing in this one. So it's just the way it goes sometimes. Let me choose a different channel. Plus sign, choose forms. And in addition to these kind of top two, man, it's always got to be something. Let me just pick somewhere else. I think because this is something relatively new, it is it's not showing as consistently as I would like for it to show. There we go. So I just had to kind of bump it, if you will. But in addition to the two options that you would typically see in a Forms tab app integration in Teams, where you can create a shared form or add an existing one, you'll notice there's a new one here now too called Create a Workflow to Automatically Collect Responses. And so when I click on this, you'll see some interesting things. So these are three kind of out of the box, if you will, forms surveys that Microsoft has created already for you so that you don't have to start from scratch to be able to measure employee or student well-being, for that matter, or maybe even you want to do sort of a daily health check-in on your employees. You could start with these, edit these. You could absolutely create your own too if you really wanted to. But I think it's nice to be able to have something to start with. So let's say, for example, I wanted to do this daily health check-in. I can select this, and it's going to give me a little bit more information of some things here in this case. You notice that you can set up the recurring survey and an auto reminder for your teams in this case. So what I'm going to do is click this button that says Get Started. Now, when I do that, it's actually going to go ahead and create that form. Again, this was created from a template that Microsoft has created already on your behalf. So pretty cool. Okay, there's 4 simple questions. Who are you? If you in your organization have like an employee ID number you want to capture, but then in this case, like what's your current, how would you describe your current physical condition? And have you recently encountered anyone who's been infected, unfortunately, with the coronavirus, yes or no, and sort of submit that. And of course, you know, there's a whole lot of kind of HR stuff wrapped around being able to submit that response, I'm sure. But nonetheless, you can leverage this or you can customize your own questions in this case here. But let's say this was good enough for you. You just wanted to get this started. You can go here and click on Next Step. At this point now, this is where you get to be able to add a little bit of the Power Automate flow piece of it, essentially. But again, we can share the link to where you can find this information that's fairly new on the web. But suffice to say, all you're really going to do here in this case is kind of follow these 4 steps. The way you kind of get to defining these steps is you click this link here that says Reminder Customize, which is now going to open up Power Automate. It might ask you to sign in. It did on my demo environment, but if not, it'll just take you to the Power Automate landing page. And as you can see here, this particular flow is actually using the ability to set a reminder. They call it a meeting reminder in this case, but setting a reminder in Microsoft Teams during the workday, essentially. So it's using a recurrence timer component as well as an integration with Teams. It's showing you what this is going to connect to, at the very least, is Microsoft Teams. So when you click Continue, for any of you that are familiar at all with Power Automate, and I believe we're going to be doing some future webinars around Power Automate. Is that right, Stacy? I think we're going to kind of get into some of the meat and potatoes around Power Automate and Flow.
That is the plan.
Outstanding. So a little bit of a sneak peek here for some of you that are interested in looking at Power Automate, but you know, it takes you to this sort of canvas, this designer here that allows you to be able to interact with Power Automate and this flow so that you can set up these different rules and so forth. But this one is really pretty straightforward. It's basically saying, you know, the recurrence is every day. So again, this is a daily check-in. You could certainly edit this and change this. If I wanted to change this so that it's not running every single day, maybe I wanted it to be only Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays or whatever, you could change that if you wanted, but that's the recurrence for this flow. And then the message that's going to be posted into Teams is the thing you'll definitely need to inform this flow on what to do. So maybe I wanted to go to a specific team, and because I'm logged in as this user, notice that it interrogates my identity and it gives me a list of teams to which I'm a member. Okay, so maybe again, I want to pick on that Mark 8 project team. I'm going to choose that team. And now once I've chosen that team, I can go to channel, and it also knows what are the channels per that team. And so maybe I want to use, again, that go-to-market plan channel, or again, you can customize it however you want. And then the message is what's going to actually show up in the body, in the post itself. So while this is based on a template and says, please go to the daily stand-up meeting, that's maybe not appropriate for what we're trying to communicate here. So I think on a daily basis, we're saying, hey, reminder, please respond to the daily health check-in, survey, something like that. And that's it, you hit save, okay? So now you're good to go. Now you've basically created the necessary rules in this Power Automate flow to leverage this particular form capability here. And then now you've done this, essentially, you've kind of gone all the way through these steps. So I hit save, that was the last thing I just did. And I click next step, and hit save, and I'm done. So now what it did automatically for me is it automatically created this tab in this channel. Now, of course, this was in a different channel than I referred to. I referred to this one over here, the Mark 8. I think it was go-to-market plan. Yeah, there it is. There's that post right there. So I kind of got my wires crossed a little bit. They're not quite making sense, but there's the post itself. Again, that was actually done through the Power Automate flow. Had I done this appropriately, you would see that tab up here as well too, but I'll just go back to the channel where I put that tab. Basically, it shows up as a tab. They've got that ability to fill out this form and be able to submit that. And again, you could use a Teams connector to be able to see whenever people are submitting forms so that you can actually look at all the results and so forth. But I think that's pretty slick to be able to have that ability to easily, again, without you having to know a whole lot about creating forms, setting up forms, and at the very least also creating Power Automate flows, you could use one of these built-in surveys for checking in with employees through Teams and just kind of get off and running relatively fast. So pretty cool, I think. Okay, any other questions that have popped up just yet, Stacy? I think I will just use the last minute and a half to 2 minutes that we have to show one thing that I blog post about recently. It actually was something that came out after our forms episode. It released to market, of course it did. And it is something that had been one of the probably most asked about, at least from our customers for sure, most asked about capabilities, which has to do with, can I create forms templates? And I'll just show you really quickly kind of what it used to look like and what it looks like now. So there is no kind of like straightforward, like, okay, I want to take this form and create a template for it necessarily. What you can do, however, is you can say, let me pick a different form, one that's not based off of a poll, of a quick poll. So here's a location team offsite. So I've got a location team offsite in this case here, and I want to be able to share this and share this as a template, okay? So if I say get a link to duplicate and I copy this here, so now I'm effectively saying I want to share this as a template with someone else. So now when I go to a new browser tab and I paste this in, what it's going to do here in this case, it's going to give me the option to duplicate it. And this is the kind of the magic part that came out recently is, oh, it's not doing it here. Okay, I lost my steps already. Sorry about that. This is simply creating the form as a copy from that existing template. That ability to be able to create the template itself is actually from Teams. And I think I'm going to run out of time in doing that here. So what I will say is we've got a blog post on Pate's website for that, got a little video demonstration on how to do it. But the long and short of it is that you now have the ability to create a form in Teams to create a form in Microsoft 365 and then be able to leverage that also in another Microsoft 365 group. That was a limitation before, was that if you're going to be able to create a form before, it was limited into where that group was itself, or you created a new group out of it for that matter too. But now you can actually create it and have it show up in another group as well. So pretty slick integration. Okay, well, I think that is about as much as we can get through here today. So what do we got coming up next time, looks like?
Oh, Joy.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it?
Oh, I want to talk about it. So, because I actually talk about this a lot when I'm doing Teams training, which, as you all can imagine, has been going on a lot in recent months. Let's just be real, this year. Private channels in Teams, it's a big deal. But it's also a bit more complex than what it just sounds like. So next week on the 14th, Richard's going to join me, but Joy of SharePoint is going to get real about private channels inside of Teams and the good, the bad, the ugly, when to use it, when it makes sense, or when maybe we just need to think about why we are all here together on the same team anyway. So please tell your friends, tell your family, shout it out. Let's all get together in a week to talk about private channels inside of Teams. It's going to be fun. We're going to have so much fun.
Absolutely, can't wait. And for those of you that are looking for ways to get in touch with us and ask us further questions, we've got our information here up on the screen. You can certainly send us emails. You can follow us on Twitter. These QR codes go directly to our LinkedIn profile, so please do connect with us on LinkedIn. And then I lastly do have to say, I was just checking my notes and I realized I got ahead of myself. It wasn't the forms piece that was actually new, it was Planner. It was Planner. We talk about so many things in Microsoft 365 all the time.
We do.
It was Planner that this new capability came out to, not Forms. So I just kind of got it again turned around in my head. Planner has this great new capability now that recently released that allows you to take a Planner plan and use that as a template in a different Microsoft 365 group. That was absolutely not possible until very recently. So again, yeah, that's magic. And that came out well after our Planner episode that we delivered. Otherwise, we'd have talked about it for sure. So, okay.
Real quick, there is a question. Can we generate a PDF file from form submissions? And by default, it just goes to Excel. But I've never done this. But I would say you could take a flow and transform it, or unless Excel will let you export to PDF, but not magically.
What I will say that I do typically, I'll just use this one as an example. So what I do with these responses is I actually do print summary in this case. And when you do a print summary, I just print that to a PDF. So now I've got a PDF of this, the summary in this case. It's not the raw Excel data, but it's actually maybe kind of better in this case because it's got all the visuals and things like that, right?
That's much more better.
Yeah, so you could do that way, and so hopefully.
And if you're like me and you don't want to have to click those buttons, Power Automate.
Yes, definitely. So I guess the answer is there's a number of different ways to do that for sure. Some are ways that you're stuck with doing it the way that it is, and others give you lots more customization, like Joy was mentioning. So, okay, well, hope you all enjoyed. Thanks for taking a couple of extra minutes hanging in with us here today. And we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Have a great rest of your day.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.